The ProAct know-how.
At 4:30 our time, maybe not. At 4:30 our time, Mrs. May was giving her final pitch to the EU summit meeting to see if they would agree to her having an extension of Brexit beyond the deciding date. The reason we chose to hold this information session today was because this is the EU summit leaders meeting, and those 27 leaders of the countries have to unanimously vote to agree to the withdrawal treaty. Now, the fact that the British haven't even accepted it yet means they can't vote to accept to approve that. And but they could agree that not to allow the UK an extension, in which case by about 8 o'clock tonight we will know whether the EU are going to allow the option of an extension for the UK with conditions. What they've been saying this afternoon is that the only way an extension will be granted is if the UK accept the withdrawal treaty next week. So if they don't accept the withdrawal treaty, then Brexit should go ahead next week on the 29th. The law says, and I don't know the exact time, that just before midnight UK time, UK Brexit and it's an EU law and the UK law, but they could pass it as late as the 11th minute of the 11th hour. And if they agreed that, the withdrawal treaty is all in place. So everything could still go very smoothly. But what we're here today is to try and find out what could go wrong and what could go right. I promised the team that I'll talk very quickly and I won't keep you, because we do want to answer questions and give you some know-how, some practical solutions. Because everybody's got uncertainty, everybody's got doubt, and we're all seeking some clarity of vision. And we know from our experience here in Cyprus that things are changing step by step, and I'll talk a bit about that later. We've all got family, we've all got business, and we've got questions regarding residency, social welfare, tax, and our businesses. And we want to try and give some insight about what way forward we can all have. I clearly need to practice with the microphone properly. In any business, they always do business planning on a scenario basis. Maybe not in politics, maybe not in the EU, but there's a best case, a worst case, and a middle road scenario, and that's exactly what we've got. And every good business has already planned for Brexit. The worst case scenario is what they're calling a no deal Brexit, and every business and every individual can plan for no deal and have certainty about their future. There's a best case scenario, and which we've known about for 9 months. There's no ifs, there's no buts. There's a withdrawal treaty which sets out exactly what's going to happen in terms of individuals for the foreseeable future. But there's also a middle road that we already know, because the UK government have unilaterally given EU expats guarantees about their future rights. And the Cypriot government last month reciprocated on that and guarantees British expats the same rights as they enjoy as EU citizens after Brexit, even with a no-deal Brexit. But it needs decisions. It always needs decisions. And the UK Parliament, the withdrawal treaty is signed off by Theresa May's negotiating team and the EU's negotiating team and the Commission, but not by the political parties. It's got to be signed off by the UK Parliament and the summit of EU leaders, the 27. That's okay. And that's what's happening today, except that they can't ratify the withdrawal treaty today because the UK haven't accepted it. They won't consider it until the UK accept it, and that's where the uncertainty is coming from. They could offer an extension or a conditional extension, so they could say, you could, we will give you the 3-month extension, or the 6 months extension, or the 20-month extension, as long as you pass a withdrawal treaty next week. And this is what the French president is saying this afternoon. Again, we will know that by the end of today. So the best case scenario, the withdrawal treaty that we've got, it could still be in place as late as a week on Friday at 11 o'clock at night. What we don't know is what things will change afterwards, and we can only look forward to what they are. If there's no deal, though, there's no such thing as no deal. If there is no deal, it's all about trade, it's all about vested interests, big business, and political influence that is holding up this whole process. Even if there is Brexit next week. Oh, it's Carol Page. Hello, Carol. Don't be late, otherwise everybody will look at you. Know you're famous. If we leave with no deal, then Britain would have to trade under world trade rules instead of EU trade rules. Now, who's here running an international cross-border business at the moment? So actually, no deal wouldn't actually negatively impact you in terms of your day-to-day life. It would, as I'll come to later on. But no deal is a viable option, and it would mean that straight away the governments would have to start making decisions about what the way forward is for individuals and for businesses. And again, we'll explore that later on. Looking forward, we can say that there's two worlds, two colour worlds in our future. There's a yellow slip world and there's a pink slip world. In Cyprus, we all know that there is lots of people with yellow EU residency permits living here who enjoy EU citizen rights. But there's also lots of people here with pink slips that are not EU citizens, but they've still got the right to live and work here. And it's the same in the UK. There's more immigration into the UK from outside the EU than from inside. And so just because we're not in the EU doesn't mean that we can't travel, we can't own overseas property, we can't buy property in Dubai, we can't live and work in India or Australia or China. There's just different rules. And those new rules, we don't know for certainty until we agree them with the EU. What we do know with certainty is that if you're an EU expat in the UK, you've been guaranteed the same rights as an EU citizen to live in the UK for the rest of your life with your family, and your family doesn't have to join you up until for another 2 years. So a Cypriot can go to the UK on the 28th of March and live there for the rest of his life as an EU citizen. And this is what the settlement scheme that is coming up in the UK is about. Now, and that is what our friends in the Cypriot government have reciprocated on, because they like the British business, the British expats. That there's a large Cypriot community in London, and they want to reciprocate that, and they've said that they will reciprocate on the British guarantees. We haven't heard that from a lot of other governments, and the reason why is because until the UK leaves the EU, they can't break ranks. The EU doesn't cover everything. The EU is not a sovereign country. It has control over trading rules, economic rules, but generally immigration, tax and residency rights are down to individual countries. and bilateral agreements, which is why you see Americans in Cyprus, why you see people from Asia living and working in Cyprus, why Cyprus welcomes people from Iran and from China and Russia to be citizens here. The transition is what's causing the uncertainty, and the transition, the first step is the withdrawal treaty, which will or will not be agreed maybe by next Friday, maybe by the end of an extension, and that's for us to see. So what we want to do and how we see it is we want to look forward to what we know. We know what the worst case scenario is under pink slip rules or under no deal rules, and so what do you need for your business and for your personal rights in that scenario. So first of all, I want to look at EU citizenship. It gives us 4 freedoms: a freedom to move as people, to move our money, to trade across border, and to provide services. And that's what we all have got used to, moving to France, moving to Spain, moving to Germany, Netherlands, or Norway. But people used to live in Cyprus and in Spain and in Portugal before the EU, and people lived in the Middle East before the EU. So these things can carry on without it. But those 4 freedoms, those universal rights within the EU, are what UK citizens will lose at some point or other. And we'll cover that as we go through the options today. So the next point, you've been guaranteed the same rights as an EU citizen to live in the UK for the rest of your life with your family, and your family doesn't have to join you up until for another 2 years. So a Cypriot, great ranks. The EU doesn't cover everything. The EU is not a sovereign country. It has control over trading rules, economic rules, but generally immigration, tax and residency rights are down to individual countries and bilateral agreements, which is why you see Americans in Cyprus, why you see people from Asia living and working in Cyprus, why Cyprus welcomes people from Iran, from China and Russia to be citizens here. The transition is what's causing the uncertainty, and the transition, the first step is the withdrawal treaty, which will or will not be agreed maybe by next Friday, maybe by the end of an extension, and that's for us to see. So what we want to do and how we see it is we want to look forward to what we know. We know what the worst case scenario is under pink slip rules or under no deal rules, and so what do you need for your business and for your personal rights in that scenario. So first of all, I want to look at EU citizenship. It gives us 4 freedoms: a freedom to move as people, to move our money, to trade across border, and to provide services. And that's what we all have got used to, moving to France, moving to Spain, moving to Germany, Netherlands, or Norway. But people used to live in Cyprus and in Spain and in Portugal before the EU, and people lived in the Middle East before the EU. So these things can carry on without it. But those 4 freedoms, those universal rights within the EU, are what UK citizens will lose at some point or other. And we'll cover that as we go through the options today. So the next point is residency options. The UK have announced a settlement scheme, and this is part of the withdrawal treaty, but they've guaranteed EU expats can still have this right even if there's no deal. And this is a right from the after the 29th of March, so it starts the next day, that they can apply online and pretty much get rubber stamped by just proving that they're resident in the country and they haven't got a criminal record, and confirming their EU passport. They don't even need an ID in the UK. That they can get a settled status, and the settled status allows them to be in the UK for the rest of their life. If their family's not with them at the 29th of March, they've still got 2 years to join them. And the important thing here is to remember that all the planning with the withdrawal treaty is geared up to December 2020, the end of next year. So all the noise that you hear about a long-term extension, none of that is considering anything beyond December next year. So if there's an extension granted, the transition period will still end at the end of next year. So this is the fudge that could come through today that would allow the politicians a bit longer to agree, for the British to agree the EU deal, or for the UK to say, well, no, we're going to leave without that withdrawal treaty. But there's nothing that the EU are doing that says that they want to extend the deal beyond the end of next year. And so people, the EU citizens, have only got a limited period of time over this transition period to apply for this EU settled status. From January 21, the UK introduced their new rules, which will be more similar to those that Canada and Australia apply. So if any of you've got a family that have gone to live in Australia, that you'll know that they have quite stringent criteria. They have to have jobs, they have to have contracts, they have to have revenue and capital, as well as everything else. Well, that's what the situation will be with the UK. Anyone who's trying to take a wife that they've married while working abroad back to the UK will understand the amount of income that you need before you can bring your foreign-born spouse back into the UK, even if you're a UK citizen. So the rules will get a lot tougher to get into the UK if you're not a UK citizen by then. But the UK have guaranteed that EU citizens can stay on. Point of that is that there's no reason why EU countries can't reciprocate. So Cyprus have guaranteed the rights of all expats living in Cyprus to be the same after the Brexit. So if you consider what's happened with Ireland, it's all amicable, it's all agreed. There's just a political noise. The Irish government have confirmed that they will not impose a hard border in Ireland. The UK government have confirmed they will not impose a hard border in Ireland. There is in existence a common travel agreement between the UK and Ireland, which gives Irish and British citizens the right to freely move between Ireland and the UK to live and work any time. And that will continue. It's already in existence before the EU, and it will continue after the EU. And it's quite a good model for Brexit, and I can't understand why they just don't use that. And so there's no restriction on the Irish in terms of still being able to live and work between Ireland and the UK. So when Barclays set up a branch in Ireland and transferred jobs and people there, it's a really good decision, because they haven't got any residency issues for their people because of the common travel agreement between Ireland and the UK. So it's not actually a loss. It will guarantee that the business will stay within the Greater United Kingdom trading bloc. So the next question is that when Brexit happens, if the UK is out, will other countries then offer a reciprocal agreement? Another way that you can retain your rights is to take a dual citizenship. So if any of you've got a bit of Irish in you, or French, or Cypriot, there's a potential to get a dual citizenship. Some countries don't have that right. So traditionally, Germany don't allow dual citizenship. So you've got to be German, or if you change your passport, you have to change permanently. You can't have a German passport and another country. That's not the case for Ireland, for UK, for Cyprus. So dual citizenship is an option. So what the Germans have done, they've introduced a special law for the British this year to allow dual citizenship for British citizens once they've lived in Germany for more than 5 years. So if you've lived in Cyprus for 7 years, you could apply for a passport. If you've got a Cyprus passport because you've lived here, worked here, or just as a retired expat for 7 years, you can get a Cyprus passport. And the Cyprus passport then makes you an EU citizen. And so you retain your EU citizens' rights without the EU. This is a Cyprus rule. The same as Cyprus can set their rules for residency for people that want to buy a passport, be they from Russia or India, Afghanistan, Kazakhstan or Iran. So these things can open up, and these things are available to British people. And we do quite a lot of those. How long does it take your passport to come through?
1.5 years.
Yeah, but not anymore.
Sorry,
It's getting a
can I
lot
just
quicker.
ask, does that involve spending £500,000 on a house though?
No,
Okay.
that's only if you're from outside the EU. That's citizenship
Okay.
by investment. We're talking about citizenship by time served. So it's like murder. You get done for murder, you get 8 years is a life. The average
Okay.
term you get for your life sentence. So if you do 8 years in Cyprus, 7 years, you can then
That's interesting
stay.
because if you go onto any websites about buying a house, it does tend to say, and include citizenship if you spend over £500,000.
Yeah.
It's 2.5 million.
And
Is it that much?
Yes, minimum of 500,000.
they're just
2
trying.
million invested in Cyprus.
They're just trying to sell you something. They're not interested in you. What they want is somebody who's got 2.5 million to put in their bank
Thank you
account.
for that. That's great.
And so if you've got a yellow slip now, you can start that process, and you have to know some Cypriots to sign. You have to sign that they know you. You know, you've got to have your residency and showing that you've got some income. But
Wow.
it's something that you can do.
Thank you for that. That's very illuminating.
If you haven't got 7 years, but you have got a yellow slip, and you can magic up that you've been here for 5 years, the Cypriots will give you their equivalent of the UK settled status at the moment. This is a permanent residency. Now, permanent residency is issued under EU rules. But it's a 10-year pass to give you freedom of movement between the UK and Cyprus without restriction. So whatever restriction might come in the future, you wipe it out because you've got your 10-year permanent residency MEU3 slip, and you're literally giving them away. It would take 8 months, a year for them to do it at the start of the year. And now they're coming through in less than a week because they know they can't issue them after a no-deal Brexit, so they're really rushing them through.
And what's the criteria for MEU3?
We had a great case this month. We had somebody who had owned a property here for 5 years. No. There could be a scenario where you've owned it, we don't know anybody like this. There could be a scenario where you've owned a property here for 5 or 10 years and you've only been here for a month, and at the moment, if you've owned a property here for 5 years, they will give you an MEU3, a permanent residency certificate.
We have a question from online
Okay.
viewer. Yeah. If a British citizen applies for a yellow slip just before 29th, does it grant a permanent residency in Cyprus even if no deal? Does he need to stay here for some time or can travel freely?
So the question is if they've got a yellow slip on the 28th of March, what's the rules? Now technically, after the with a no-deal Brexit on the 29th of March, you're no longer an EU citizen. So then everybody would have to change to the pink slip visa at some point. But what the Cypriots have said is that they will guarantee the same rights as EU citizens. So the Cypriots are saying that they will change their law, and they will say, like the British are saying, show me that you're here, show me your yellow slip, show me your passport, and we'll change your residency to a settled status. They'll change it from a yellow slip to the pink visa, and they've sort of guaranteed that. It's not. They haven't made that statement now, but that's the implication of what they've said. So even right up until the last day. So what they were doing for us, there was a change in policy at the start of March this year. So up until March, they were still accepting UK citizens into June to residency, and suddenly they said no, we're not accepting any more bookings after the 29th of March because they were planning for no deal. Just hold on for this, and they said they wouldn't accept it because if there's no deal after the 29th, they can't technically issue a yellow slip. They could do a pink slip. They could do a pink slip. I'm doing the door as well. Bless. Hello, sir. I forgot my point. I've lost my thread completely. So this question first.
So just to clarify that, Sam, some months ago we made an appointment to get our MU 3 because there was a waiting list at the time. So we don't have an appointment until April. Is that appointment still going to...
You need to go down tomorrow and then we'll give you an appointment before next Friday. And having said that, wait a minute, that was the situation till last week. On Monday, it changed, okay? Or was it Tuesday it changed? They had a ruling from Nicosia, which is what's going on today. All this politics and this theatre about, a 3-month extension. So the news came down from Nicosia that, they could accept bookings to the end of June. So we understand from how Cyprus immigration are reacting that the EU has already agreed that they're going to give the UK a 3-month extension, just based upon their policy. So they are still booking to the end of June at the moment, but if you've got a date after June, you should go down now. But I would go down before anyway, and they're pushing them through at the moment. They're not checking the details. They're saying like the UK. With the UK, you just have to show your passport, that you're resident in the country, you've got no criminal convictions, and they'll issue this settled status automatically. And that's effectively what they're doing here now. As long as you can show that you're living here, they will give you a yellow slip. And if you can show that you've had a property for 5 years, they'll accept that and give you the permanent residency. And they'll give you an appointment before next Friday.
Oh, we've had a house here for 5 years, lived here.
Yeah.
But we've actually been 7 years living here come September.
Yeah.
So what do you suggest we do if we want the dual citizenship?
Well, as long as you can prove that you've been here 7 years,
But it
then
won't be till September.
7 years.
Mm.
Then you get the permanent, if you get the permanent residency now, 29th of March, they've still got 2 years to join them. Now, the important thing here is to remember that all the planning with the withdrawal treaty is geared up to December 2020, the end of next year. So all the noise that you hear about a long-term extension, none of that is considering anything beyond December next year. So if there's an extension granted, the transition period will still end at the end of next year. So this is the fudge that could come through today that would allow the politicians a bit longer to agree, for the British to agree the EU deal, or for the UK to say, well, no, we're going to leave without that withdrawal treaty. But there's nothing that the EU are doing that says that they want to extend the deal beyond the end of next year. And so people, the EU citizens, have only got a limited period of time over this transition period. they're saying that they will honour that.
Where'd you go to register?
The immigration office. One of the girls will tell you where it's located at afterwards. Okay, but that is the Cypriot and the British government and our recommendation that if you've got the opportunity to get the 10-year residency, if you're staying here, do that. You've still got time to get the citizenship application. You could put the citizen application in, it could be taking 18 months, and the law could change and say, no, you have to switch over to the pink slip, and that could cause you a problem if you're trying to get a medical card or you're trying to get a tax rebate. This gentleman over here has been so patient. He's been waiting to ask his question.
My wife and I, a couple of months ago, we went to the immigration office to get sorted out our status. Just recently left the Royal Air Force. My wife's English. Her yellow slip came through fairly quickly. You mentioned the pink slips for non-Europeans, thinking that, well, that's obviously why I haven't received mine yet, because I had to go up to Nicosia. So what are the rights? Are there any differences in the rights for the pink slip holder and a yellow slip holder? I'm an Australian citizen, British resident, so I'm obviously going to be issued a pink slip. What would happen as far as my wife's status on a yellow slip once I get issued my pink one?
Basically, am I going to be the boss?
That's actually quite interesting. That's actually quite interesting.
Of course.
Because if you had income, you could have applied as a dependent relative.
We both work.
Yeah. All right. So a dependent relative can't work. So on a residency visa, the visa depends upon what status it is. So even if it's a yellow slip, so a non-European spouse of an EU citizen might have a non-working visa. They don't ultimately get the right to work. But you've applied for the right to work, means they put you onto the pink slip version, and they will grant you the right to work on your visa. It will be time limited, so you might get 1 year or you might get 5, but you won't get more than that.
Can I just check though, the fact that Tim has just finished 36 years in the RAF, despite being Australian, means that he can only work here for a limited period, and that in the UK he is a permanent resident. Is that beyond what you can clarify at this moment?
It's amazingly interesting, and I'll tell you what, you were living in the UK?
We were living in the UK till we got posted here.
Yeah.
We got Tim obviously is Australian, but he's was in the RAF until January. We got posted here. It was always our plan to retire here. Second posting. I went to get my yellow slip. We filled in all the paperwork. Tim's paperwork went off to Nicosia. I got mine the next week, 5 days, something like that. We're now probably 4 weeks into Tim not having a slip whatsoever. He's applying for jobs, and we're a little bit like, where are we now?
Right, I understand that question, and the scenario is this, is that once you've got your residency permit, you've got the flexibility. Once you've got a residency permit as an EU citizen, you can move anywhere around the EU to live and work, which is what you can do as a British citizen.
Yeah.
Any British citizen here could go and, with their yellow slip, could go to another EU country and live and work. Estonia, you can apply online. You don't even have to go there to get your residency permit.
It is cold, you're right.
Yeah. But you would apply online at Estonia, formerly an Estonian company, go and collect your documents, and then you've got EU citizenship, and then you can work in the whole of the EU, and then you wouldn't have had a problem, and you wouldn't have to go to Nicosia. But that's another way of doing it. I digress, but to your question, it will be limited on the application, and there are different stages of what you can do, and without knowing the detail of that application. But essentially, once you've got a working visa, then you can pay into the social insurance scheme and get the benefits as you pay into the social insurance scheme, and you've got the rights of working, and you can become a tax resident. You can't register for tax and social in Cyprus until you've got the visa.
Right,
Does that
so,
make sense?
Medical.
If you've had any experience in the past of people that have gone for a pink slip, have you any idea how long it generally takes? It's been about 6 weeks now since we've been to the immigration office and applied. So how long?
No,
Because they say we're in Limassol, and they said I had to go up to Nicosia.
yeah. In 6 to 8 weeks, it's
Okay.
not unusual. Not
Oh.
unusual at all.
So
Yeah.
that's fine. Thanks very much.
I'll go to that gentleman
Yeah.
first.
Sam, I don't know whether I'm being a bit dim here, but I wonder if you could just clarify things for us. We retired here 14 years ago, and the paperwork then produced a pink slip.
A pink residency visa.
Yeah, a pink slip as it was. Well, the first thing came up was a little buff book. Then you got a pink slip, which was valid, I think, for 5 years. We renewed that, and it then became a yellow slip, which I believe was all we required. And I wasn't planning on doing anything until the kerfuffle started a few months ago about MEU 1s and MEU 3s, and at that stage they were requiring 5 years of paperwork in terms of utility bills and God knows what else. So I said, well, I'm not doing that. And then I got a short while ago, there was a declaration from the Cyprus government saying that you could apply for this MEU3 and all that would be required in the future would be a passport. They've done away with all this 5 years of paperwork requirement. I've done nothing, we're still sitting with a yellow slips. Do I need to do anything? Or can I just stick with what we've
They
got?
have reduced the hurdles to getting the permanent residency right down.
Yeah.
So it was very laborious. So if you were, if you were Estonian living here and then you wanted to apply for permanent residency, you'd have quite a lot of hurdles to go through to prove that you're actually here. And this is what your situation is with your 7 years.
Change it from that to
If you
this
don't
MEU3.
do anything, at some point you will need to change your yellow slip back to a pink visa slip.
For this MEU3.
You won't have the opportunity necessarily. We don't. That's one of the uncertainties. What we know at the moment is you can get the permanent residency MEU3 under EU rules. Once Brexit goes through, the Cypriots can't offer that because it's under EU law. Now there is a non-EU citizen version of permanent residency, but that's under Cypriot rules, and then the burden of proof is a bit higher and there's more paperwork. But what we're saying at the moment is that the burden of proof is very low. They're happy to do a minimum amount of work, but you have to turn up and you have to show that you've been here for 5 years.
So it might be worth just popping into the immigration and say,
Definitely.
change it now.
Yeah.
Right.
And so if we know that there's an extension today, if we know that there's an extension granted to the end of June or the end of May, then you've got a bit of time. If not, you need to do it before the end of next week.
I'll go tomorrow.
Where was the next question?
Applying for the MEU3, does your tax status or where you actually declare your tax affairs, does that affect that at all?
Fantastic. I've got a great script here. Does anybody want to see it later? But I was going to cover that later.
Oh, well.
Tax has nothing to do with your residency. Sorry, no, that's not true. Your residency permit it doesn't necessarily affect your tax residency. Yeah? You need to be resident here to be a tax resident here, but tax is not impacted by Brexit at all. It's nothing to do with Brexit. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Medical.
Well, moving on. I've got a bombshell for you next. Go on.
So, sorry, the tax question. I mean, I can't claim my state pension for another 9 years. Will I have to pay tax on it?
Jumping to tax. Tax has nothing to do with Brexit. it's not affected by Brexit at all. It's affected by your residency, and if you can't be a resident here, you can't pay tax here. So some people who like to live in Florida, it's very hard to get a green card, their version of their residency visa. And there's a lot of expats have got property in Florida, and they have to go out of country every 3 months. But the Americans let them go out just for a week or a day, so they can come back in on a 3-month travel visa. So and I've jumped the travel thing now. If you're travelling to a country up to 90 days, then under international treaties, you're allowed to do that. So, you know, it's not, again, it's nothing to do with the EU, it's an international travel treaty that allows you to move between countries. And I forgot your question now.
Tax on
So,
pensions.
you can move between, but if somebody's doing that type of moving around, they can't be tax resident in America because they're going in and out. So if you've got a residency permit, you can become a tax resident here. And this is what attracts people to invest a lot of money in Cyprus, so they can have a tax residency here. But the actual tax rates are nothing to do with Brexit. The tax rates are all down to what the Cyprus government wants to tax and what the double taxation treaty between Cyprus and your home country says. VAT is an EU tax, and that's the source of a lot of the shenanigans. Oh, did I use that word? From the EU. So the exit fee that the UK are paying is related to the VAT. The money that the UK puts in is from VAT. This is where the UK raises VAT, and those funds go towards the EU and funding that. And that's something that will change. The UK won't stop VAT once they leave the EU. They'll still call it VAT, but they'll keep all that money themselves. And that's what's behind this notion with no deal with Brexit, of the Brexit bonus. It
There
didn't
should
exist
be a
before.
border.
Why?
Because
No, there never
Eire
was.
is part of Europe, and Belfast is part of the United Kingdom or the Northern Ireland. If we come out of the EU, then we are United
Listen,
Kingdom
there's four-
and Northern Ireland.
there-
There should be a border.
There's 4 kingdoms in Ireland, and there was the 8 counties in the north, and they were split into the 6. So
But this discussion is not for here. This discussion
No,
is
no,
about
it's a
Cyprus.
different thing. So it's an issue, but it's the EU want to create the border, and that's what the problem is. As an analogy, I know it's on a different scale, but Andorra, San Marino, Liechtenstein are all independent states within the EU and the Vatican City, and they have no borders with their EU countries. So they're not EU members, and there's no borders on them, but they've just found a way to do a deal so that doesn't matter. You know? So there is a way. And they made an agreement on Gibraltar. They made that a long time ago. They're still huff and puff. But the agreement with Gibraltar is that the English will control the ports into Gibraltar. They're going to keep open the land border between Cyprus, between Gibraltar and Spain. But what the Spanish have agreed is subject to, there's an airport in Gibraltar, and the Spanish customs are going to sit in there, and the Spanish and the EU and the English have agreed that that's what it is. So that's the way they've dealt with that. So there's a land border between Gibraltar and Spain that's going to stay open because of that. And that was agreed a long time ago. And that's far more contentious than Ireland.
Spain want Gibraltar back though, don't they? They're saying they won't.
No, they've agreed that. They've already agreed that. That's all done and dusted. They will make noises because they have to, but you know, that's the arrangement that's been made. Okay. At that point then, I think we should start wrapping it up. If you've got any other questions that you want to ask us, we're still available. And there's a little piece of paper in the back of the packs if you wanted to write down a question and get us to get back to you and get an answer with. I hope that's been helpful and informative. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The ProAct Know-How, brought to you by ProAct.